Aloha and welcome to this practice wide called Digits Text Template. Digits Text Template, Digits Text Template, Digits Text Template. It's hard to say that 3 times fast. Hard to say that 3 times fast. Easy, however, to do this WOD, and this is one of my favorite WODs of the whole semester because remember, a few WODs back, I was commenting about how crufty the code looks here. Look at that code. That looks terrible. Who the heck knows what that's doing anyway? And it's so repetitive, right? And I said to you, in a few WODs, a couple weeks, next week, we're going to pull back the curtain and you're going to realize that you had the power to fix this all the time. You just didn't know you had it. Just like Dorothy's ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz. Today is the day where you find out you've been wearing the ruby slippers all along. And I'll tell you why you've been wearing the ruby slippers. It has to do with this main method and this index method. And remember, way back in the very beginning, whenever you see an introduction to play, you always see this main method, which is basically a Scala template that takes some parameters, and including the page name and then the content, and then you stick the content in there. And then all your other pages basically are contained within a call to that main template, which is now factoring out all the garbage, not the garbage, but all the code associated with the header and the footer, and then the stuff in the middle, the actual page contents, is what becomes unique to each page. So our index page and our new contact page, you don't see the header and the footer stuff there, right? They just call main, which inserts, and they call main, they pass it the stuff that's page specific, just like, a regular program where you have a function, you pass it arguments, and, that's the whole idea of modularity, right? So a function encapsulates a certain behavior. You don't want to replicate that behavior all through your code. You want to encapsulate it in a function and then invoke with arguments. That's all we're doing here. And in fact, you can just keep doing this, okay? And it's awesome, all right? This is what makes, play and web application frameworks and templating so nice. And so one of the things, so what we're going to do in this WOD is show you that you can do this, okay? And I'm not going to have you actually write templates yet. The first thing is just to get more comfortable realizing that we can have as many templates as we want and we can call them from within each other. It can be as nested as we want, just like regular old programming. It's, it's nothing different from what you've been doing as a computer scientist your whole life. Okay, so the goal of this WOD is we're going to take our new contact form and we're going to refactor it so that we get rid of all this junk, this repetitive code, replace it with a template that encapsulates that all out. Okay, prior to starting it, we have to make sure that we merge one of the branches used in our digits practice. So as I say every time, good idea is to go, look at your branching diagram. It should have this kind of structure. You may have more than one branch, if you try these WODs multiple times. In my case, I just do them once and then I'm done and I merge back into master. But it should look something like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use the templates that I've conveniently created for the digits, what's it called? The play example form system. So as you can see here, I've got digits in one window, I've got the play example form system in another window, and you're going to want to use, you're going to want to have both of these applications open because we're going to be sharing some code. Okay, so start your timer. I really think this is such cool stuff here. And then we create a branch off our digits. So let's go over here. We're in master, go to branches, and we're supposed to call this template 1. So master add template 1 branch. Okay. Perform QA, check style and tests. Again, just to, sanity check kind of style. So we call check style, no suspicious code found. We go down to digits, we say activator test. Why do we do this? I'll say it every time. Whenever you start working on a system after you've downloaded changes or you're just starting for the day, always run your tests, always run check style. Make sure that you're starting off with a clean system, so if things go south for you later on, then you know that everything was cool. Okay? So we run our test pass, check style pass, so now we're ready to actually do stuff. Okay? So the thing I'm going to say is copy the views.bootstrap3 package from play example form to digits. As we learned in the last WOD, there's a fun way to do this. Propeller C to copy that directory from play example form. Select the views package. Do a propeller V, copy directory. Okay. Okay. And here we do. We have all this bootstrap 3. Okay. So if we look, we're now in the text.scala.html. And look at what you see here is you see the divs that are, you can see that this, which was the div that we're using now, and this, they're almost exactly alike, except for the fact that where we have, non-boilerplate, we are substituting in parameters that we're taking from arguments. So we've just created, this is a little function, this is a little macro, however you want to think. It's going to take a field, which is one of our, our form field values, and we're going to take us a label and a placeholder and maybe a help string, which these default to 0, and then we fill out everything else that we need. Okay, so you see we're going to get the ID, the name, the value, all that stuff from this field object that we pass in, and then we supply the label associated with the div, with the form group, as something that we pass in. Okay, so let's see how this works. Let's go back to new contact.scala. And what I recommend you do is actually go back to play example form where you see an example invocation, which is right here. Okay, so let's make a copy of that. Again, play example form, really it's a nice system to use because it gives you this sample code. Now we're back in digits. I'm going to paste in that at text field, and I realize the text is not being known, so we have to say at import bootstrap 3 dot, and this is all Scala stuff. You just have to know that that's how you do imports. Okay, and so now it sees that text.scala.html from the from this package, and it's all good. Now it doesn't understand student form because what we have here actually is contact form. So we'll change that. Okay, and then we start looking at this and we say, okay, well in our original div that we're going to replace right now, contact form first name. So this should really be first name. And then the label, if we look around here, here's our label. The label is actually first. Okay, so let's change that to first. I don't know why IntelliJ makes these things red. They shouldn't be red. They should be black, but they aren't. Placeholder from the div we're going to replace is first name. So we'll just put that in here. And then there is no help field. Okay, there's just that error message field. So what we do is we just get rid of this. Okay, so we've replaced all this code by those 4 lines. That's like 11 or 12, maybe a dozen lines of code, many, many characters. We've stripped out all that boilerplate junk, and we're left with just the groovy stuff that we actually want. Okay, so let's save this out. Okay, and then we'll go to activator run. Okay, and then we'll just refresh, see home. And what I really should have done is been running this before and displaying the page. I'm sorry about that, so you could see, it'd be easier to tell whether it's exactly the same. But we'll go to the new contact page, and what you can see is it does, just from memory, it looks exactly the way it did before, but now for our first name field, we're using this, this Scala template rather than hard coding in the HTML. Now notice that the input field we're still hard coding, Okay? So it's not like you have to make a Scala template for every single HTML element. You can mix and match. And the general strategy I use is when there's HTML that you're replicating, you're cutting and pasting a lot, that's when you want to make a template. So you don't have to cut and paste it. If it's just some code that you use one time, then there's maybe not that much value in making a template for it, unless you just want to have templates everywhere, and you could decide to do that as well. Okay, so anyway, so that looks good, and just for grins, we'll click add. Sure, we get the errors, and then we'll say Philip Johnson 808 222 2222. That's the taxi cab. Okay, and so it's still, the form still works exactly the way that we want it to. So that's great. So now let's go ahead. I don't really need this comment because it's pretty obvious. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make a few more. We'll make a template for last name, last, placeholder is last name, and then the final one is telephone. Label, I think in mine I call it digits. You could call it telephone if you want to be less, kind of cute. And how do we do this? Something like XXX-XXX. I think that's what it was. Let's see what we used. No, we didn't use it. The placeholder was actually like an actual telephone. So we'll put the telephone, the sample telephone in here. Now we can get rid of our last name field because we got a nice convenient one, and we get rid of our telephone field. Oh, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Now that is what I call a nice looking, very easy to understand looking form, right? Okay. But the question is, does it work? I guess that would be my question. So let's go back and redisplay this page. Okay, and there it looks just like it did before. If we press add, we get all the validation just like we did before. We call Philip Johnson 808 222 3333. And we press add, and that works just like it did before. Okay, so manually speaking, we played with it. Validation still works. System still passes QA. Well, let's check that. So we'll call it check style, run, no suspicious code. And it would be kind of bizarre if this actually didn't pass tests. Well, at least check style, because we didn't really change any Java code. But let's run the tests, because that will ensure that at least when we enter valid information, things work well. And so the test runs. Okay? So that's it. It's 9 minutes. I haven't quite committed yet, so let me go to changes. And we've added all this stuff. So finished text template WAD. Commit and sync. Okay, we're all done. I'm going to give it 10 minutes, okay? And what I want to point out to you is that there's an extra bonus associated with this, because not only have I implemented a template for text fields, I've given you a template for text area, for selection, for radio buttons, for passwords, and for checkboxes, okay? So making forms are radically simpler now for at least these basic standard HTML form elements. But what you'll see is, don't limit yourself just to the specific a specific HTML input form element. You can make these templates for anything at all, because just like we have this main and and then we call index and new contact. Now you can basically write functions or procedures. You can modularize your template code as just like you modularize your Java code. It's a wonderful thing. You can now build up incredibly more complicated you know, applications or user interfaces, because now you have building blocks that you can compose together.